Facial profiling is one of the primary assessment tools in knowing your dominant energy type. Let's take a look at the type 2 soft, subtle woman's face. Well, Anne, this is your expertise right here. We can actually look at Anne's face and see that she has a soft, blended, connected, relaxed quality. What are the movement that we're looking at, the shapes, the lines we're looking for?
Definitely S-curve would be a dominant movement we're looking for. Teardrops, ovals, the overall quality of movement that we're looking for, and we can even see this as we pull up all three women that we'll be profiling today, is a very blended, relaxed quality with an overall downward movement.
Softened.
Softened, that's a great keyword as well.
I think of in architecture or in construction where they take a wall with a hard corner and
just kind of round it, smooth it
out.
Or like even like a painting that maybe had really clear, distinct lines. You just kind of put a little blur on it or a little watercolor quality to it.
Blended.
So let's look at our first face, which is Amy. The overall movement. Take that in. Again, without looking at specific features, without looking at specifically her nose first, take a step back. What's the overall movement you see?
We see that softened, blended quality, downward movement.
Her overall face shape is a softened, elongated oval, and in her jawline, it has a blended, sloping quality. So there isn't a clearly defined jawline. It has a blended quality, as well as in the cheek. The cheekbone and the jaw is very connected and more filled out. I have that quality as well.
I call that an elongated cheek. Type 2 women call it jowls. I call it the elongated cheek. It's where your cheek blends into your jawline. There's not a separation.
Right. Look at her overall features. There's less contrast, and so a more blended quality there. And her eyebrows, they have a very elongated feel, starting in the inner of her eye and then kind of diffusing out around her eye. She has a heavy lidded quality. That's a very common feature for type 2s because, again, that downward movement.
We also see a teardrop nose, and her upper lip is an elongated S-curve.
Notice when she's smiling, and if you were to compare this to a type 1 or a type 3, look at the lines around her mouth. They are so blended and diffused that you can't quite tell exactly where it ends on one side or the next, that it just has a very blended quality. And when she's smiling, there isn't an upward movement. It's all staying very still. There's that lower quality in its movement.
You can see when she's dressing her truth, that quality of beauty expresses that the features of having that blended, relaxed, subtle S-curve, we call that beautiful. Type 2 women often hear the compliment of, you look so beautiful, you have such a calming effect. You really you're so soothing. I can talk to you about anything. If you're hearing this, there's a message for you to consider. The thing that you want to make sure is you're not looking at personality. This is where too many women default to think they're type 2 because of cultural training and perceptions of what a woman is supposed to be. It's an interesting space that real type 2 women are the most accurate in profiling themselves, and it also becomes the default type that too many women choose based on a stereotype that's not accurate. And so make sure you're paying attention to your facial features, because you're going to see what we just showed you if you truly are a type 2 woman. The face as a whole. If you have hooded eyelids and that's all you're relating to, don't think, well, I'm a type 2 because of that. So make sure your whole face expresses what we just showed you.
And there are 4 other assessment tools as well.
Yeah. So our next face is with Rochelle. And so again, look at the whole face and notice that blended, softened quality to it.
Her face shape is more of a softened square that you can see on the sides of her jaw and up in her hairline, how it creates that, like you said, that more sharpened angle. It's all been softened. A more blended hairline as well. There's not clear definition. You can see in her eyes, they have an almond shape. Another common feature for type 2s is to have a darkness under your eyes or a little bit of a soft bag
Yeah.
under your eye. It can be a challenge
Puffiness.
sometimes.
Yeah, you deal with more dark circles and
Mhm.
puffiness. Your nasal label fold line, which is this mark that indents around your mouth. You can see in hers when she smiles, it's an S curve.
Just a tiny little S curve right there. And then again, the line just kind of blends out, a very softened quality. And same thing featuring here as it did in Amy. Her smile, rather than moving upward, has more of a softened curve to it, keeping that downward movement. Also, her nose line, you can see the S curves there. It's not turning upward. It has a more just softened S curve movement. In her after, you can really see that S curve shine. And also the lines around her eyes, notice how they move primarily downward, creating that downward overall flow.
Lisa overall has, I think, a beautiful quality of everything moving softly downward on her face. The corners of her eyes are moving downward, the outside of her eyebrow. We can see that even her lips have a little bit of a downward movement to them. Looking at her jaw and jaw line, you can see an S curve there.
In her eyes, she has the heavy lidded quality that moves downward. And in her chin, you could even outline an oval on its side along her chin.
I love how in a type 2 woman, when dressing their truth, we really see how much they come alive. And that's going to be a variable you want to consider, that if you're truly a type 2 woman, when you put on the type 2 colors and the jewelry and have the correct movement in your hairstyle, you're going to see life come into their face. If you're not a type 2 woman, you're going to see
Life
yourself
come out of you.
yeah, you're gonna see yourself fade away.
Yeah.
It actually makes you look lifeless.
Yeah, well, if you think
That to me is really distinguishing. A
And you'll
true
start
type 2
to-
woman is like, she comes alive. And if you're not a type 2, you'll feel dull.
feel dull, dusted over, muted. You'll feel all those things that the type 2 colors are when a type 2 woman wears them. It has this energy of, they
Comes to life,
harmonize
every
and they
one of
come
these.
to
Let's look at them all together and thereafter, and how beautiful they each look and how much life they now express.
Notice the quality of soothing, calm, gentle, blended. It's just, you want to take a nice deep breath and settle in kind of feeling.
Yeah, you're like, oh, I want to give each of these women a hug. They're you're drawn to them that way, in a comforting way.
Inward inviting quality.
Yeah.
You can see their overall movement has a downward blended quality. Where can a type 2 woman get stuck in this process of facial profiling?
It's rare. It really is. A true type 2 woman, they have an emotional response that's very telling for them, that feels like they've come home to a truth in themselves. They're an inner emotional hit that brings them to tears often, to know this is me. That is and so it's a very emotional knowing.
So I would say,
rather than an intellectual, or I think this is me, there is this profound emotional knowing that they feel overall in their whole body that confirms it for them. And I'd love for you as a type 2 woman to share in a comment what that was like for you. That was the confirmation that supported what we're teaching here.
And I think where you get tripped up as a type 2 is then you start to use your mind to evaluate that feeling and question it and turn it over and look at it. And so you get more heady about it. And so trusting your heart and staying in that space. And as you use this tool in profiling others, you'll get that feeling and it'll just it'll feel really right. So trust that and move forward rather than now trying to analyze it, because that's not a space that you play your best in.
The need for reassurance to make sure you're right, but I have a video on that, how to reassure yourself.
There you go.
So go watch that video on how to reassure yourself.
Or if you have a buddy and you addressing your truth friend, or you can kind of share ideas.
That knowing it, that emotional knowing.
I'm talking about more if you're like watching a TV show and you're like trying to profile someone for fun, No, with yourself, you want to reassure yourself and move forward confidently with that.
Yeah, it's good. So thanks for sharing in a comment what this is, how you knew you were a type 2 woman.